I think we should start by saying what, to me, makes for a good popcorn film.
Yeah.
To me, a good popcorn film is something that is quick, is kind of breezy, has a simple plot, good, strong, identifiable characters, and it just moves along, keeps you entertained, isn't sluggish. It just keeps moving, and it doesn't feel like you're stopping and starting, and it doesn't feel like you're sitting through a long movie, and it's just fun to watch.
I liked seeing Iron Man and Captain America punching people. You had already seen this movie the day before I went to see it, and you had told me that I think you said it buckled under the weight of its cast and everything. So I was like, okay, this isn't going to be a Winter Soldier, so I might as well just go try to enjoy it for what it is. It's going to have some superheroes. I know the acting's going to be great. Special effects are going to be pretty functional at worst. So I just went in like that, and it did have Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. being really good superheroes. So
Did you really get as much Chris Evans Captain America as you wanted from this movie?
See, there's the thing. It's definitely no Winter Soldier, and I completely agree with you. This movie is riddled with problems, but I didn't go in expecting it to be anything else. And so I get to see some Captain America, and that's pretty much exactly what I was wanting.
My expectations were more along the lines of the original Avengers. I think Winter Soldier is probably a better movie. Winter Soldier is my favorite of all the Marvel movies out. But let's compare it to the original Avengers. The original Avengers spends significant amounts of time with each individual Avengers character, except for Thor. And most of the movie is just talking, and it's really good dialogue, and it's snappy, and it goes by really quick, and there's a few action scenes interspersed throughout. But mostly it's just build up to this one big action scene that's very satisfying because every character has their moment and they defeat the bad guy and it's good. This movie, first of all, it introduces way too many new characters. It introduces, and by introduce, I mean it throws this character at you. It introduces Baron von Strucken. It also introduces Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. I don't think, were they ever even called by those names?
They were not because Fox or whoever has the right to those names. They can only call them by the characters' actual names.
Yeah. And then there's Vision and Ultron.
Who was probably the biggest disappointment movie because James Spader's performance was amazing. The designs were pretty cool, and there was a lot cool going on for him, but he never really got his chance to really shine. He sort of just fizzled.
The movie is trying to do too many things, where the original Avengers, it didn't have to introduce those characters because the characters had already been introduced by their own full-length movies. And in the original Avengers, they give quick, really quick backstory, like, okay, if you didn't watch these other movies, you can still understand this one, because here's something really quick. Okay, you saw this one flashback scene, you understand Captain America.
I actually saw Avengers 1 before I had seen any other Marvel movie.
Yeah.
So I came in with no background, and stuff like Loki wasn't really covered who the fuck Loki was at all in Avengers, but they did a really good job setting up like really tropey in a good way stuff where you could tell that he and Thor had like what their relationship was and what was going down, that this was a really bad guy, and like you immediately saw him mind controlling, so you're like, okay, I know that this is some dick ass and he can mind control people, and that's all you needed to know.
And you can see the shift from Avengers to Avengers 2, where Avengers is a culmination of all these movies. All these movies have been leading up to Avengers. But Avengers 2 is not a culmination. Avengers 2 is a beginning point. Because Avengers 2 is mostly concerned with setting up more Marvel movies.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with it too. Stuff like Iron Man 3 is really not. There's no line between Iron Man 3 and Age of Ultron at all if you've only seen the movies.
I think that just the whole structure of this movie is flawed because like they set up character moments and then never complete them.
Yeah, that is, in my opinion, this is a perfectly fun movie. It has great performances. It has great effects. It's got It's something that you can sit through, and if you're not thinking too hard about what flaws might be in it, you can enjoy a lot of what it has to offer. The biggest problem is with its interaction with the other movies and with arcs and stuff. It does not really resolve anything. It doesn't pick up anything. It doesn't really give any momentum or anything. My biggest problem with it is that, unlike Avengers 1 felt really important. Like, you could watch this movie, and if you didn't know much about the MCU, or if you did, you could tell, okay, things are about to change. Like, this was a big event. This entire thing was a big deal. Avengers 2, the stuff that happens is a big deal because they're saving the world, but it feels like it might as well have not happened other than the mind gem showing up. Like, that feels like the only thing that was relevant because nothing gets resolved and nothing gets carried. Like, in the beginning, it's got all this stuff about Tony Stark and the moral implications of what he's doing, and everyone's mad at him, and then that's completely dropped.
Yeah, because the whole movie is basically Tony Stark fucked up, and then nothing. There are no consequences for Tony Stark.
It even extends that to everyone, where it sort of makes it like Scarlet Witch is giving these people hallucinations, and that's what's causing these character conflicts in all of them. And it sets up those character conflicts for everyone except for Captain America, pretty much, and then doesn't do anything with any of them.
It doesn't do that for Iron Man either, because like at the beginning is the only time she influences him. She doesn't even influence him in that battle scene where she gets everyone else. He's off fighting Ultron, and that doesn't go anywhere because okay, we're being like really rambly and like scattered all over the place. I think we should start at the beginning. Let's start with Iron Man and Ultron, because here is one of my big problems with this movie is Iron Man creates Ultron, and Ultron like immediately goes evil. But there are scenes where Ultron is like, oh, I hate Iron Man, and he's supposed to be like Tony Stark. He's sort of inherited some of Tony Stark's personality.
He makes the same jokes.
Yeah, that's why he's kind of like this snarky villain instead of like a super serious one. And that doesn't go anywhere. Like, they set all this up, and they set it up like you would expect the final battle to sort of focus on this Iron Man versus Ultron thing, because they're the ones that have a connection to each other, right? But that's not what happens. In the final battle, it's Ultron and Thor and Vision.
That's the entire movie right there. Is everything just gets tied up and not tied. Everything just gets all the wires crossed.
And everything just gets too complicated. Like, there are whole sections of this movie that could just straight up be cut out or moved to a different part of the movie. For instance, Ultron goes evil. The first thing he does is he goes after vibranium. He goes to Wakanda, which is just there. The only reason they bring up Wakanda and the vibranium shit is because they're making a Black Panther movie.
That, and if they had done it right, it could have tied in with the whole morality of Tony Stark thing that's the entire movie. That's also a plot line that got completely dropped. So
it's true that they dropped that, but they also bring that up with like Tony Stark's relief force. Like, after the Hulk smashes up that city, and so does Iron Man. When they're in the jet going to the farm, Tony Stark is like, okay, get the relief force to go to this city, and we'll try to smooth it over. And in the opening scenes, like, all these people hate Tony Stark's forces.
Iron Legion.
Yeah, the Iron Legion, who's trying to like keep the peace. That's dropped, but here's the thing. They could have done the exact same thing in the part where Ultron goes to get the Vision body made. Like, they could have cut out the vibranium Wakanda thing. Like, they could have hand-waved it away. Like, oh, Ultron got his hands on some vibranium. We don't need to spend 20 minutes in Wakanda.
You don't even need the vibranium, like...
Yeah, you don't necessarily need the vibranium, but they, even if they really wanted the vibranium, they could have hand-waved away that in, like, one line. But instead, they waste time introducing the gun merchant, the whole battle scene in Wakanda, the very long Hulk versus Iron Man scene in Wakanda. All of that could have been cut, except for the Iron Man versus Hulk stuff, which I understand is important for their character, but that scene could have been moved to the part in, I can't remember where it is, where where Ultron gets the new body made. That scene could have been moved to that city.
I feel like that entire scene was very much on the cutting block, but they decided to keep it in because it had all of the hallucination stuff.
All of that hallucination stuff could have been moved to that city. They could have waited, because in that part of the movie, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, they turn on Ultron before the Avengers show up. They could have waited until after that battle for the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver to turn on Ultron and still do the whole hallucination scene during those fight scenes.
Yeah, the movie would have been a lot more brisk if they had just cut out the part where he was getting the vibranium, and then you could have skipped straight to the huge gratuitous fight scene that no one cared about, where they were trying to get the tank with Vision in it away from Ultron.
That part's fine. It's just long.
Hmm.
That's my problem with all of the action scenes in this movie is they're fine. It's fine to have the action scene where it is for the most part. They're just too long. And with so many characters and so many like character arcs trying to go on all at once, why are they wasting so much time on these action scenes that to me are not satisfying to watch? Like these are middling average action scenes. We're not talking about really awesome like the raid type action scenes here. These are standard fare, right?
Yeah, the special effects are good.
The special effects are all right, but they don't make it any more exciting.
No, no, they don't. It's more just eye candy.
And I'm wondering like when these movies are going to start like having fights in wastelands, because this movie towards the end becomes Evacuation the movie, where they're just trying to get all these people out of the city. And I understand like that's awesome, like they see the Batman movies, they saw Superman, and these movies just have wanton destruction where the heroes seemingly don't care at all about the civilians.
See, except for the first and last fight scenes, I don't think that really I don't think the movie did a very good job of that, because you've got like the entire scene in Wakanda where they're going through the city with the Hulk and just a shit ton of civilians die.
I think that's just a problem with how long the fight scene goes on, because in that fight scene, Iron Man does try to save people. Like, he tries to get people out of the way of the Hulk. But the scene goes on for so long, and there's so much destruction going on that you're like, okay, I don't believe he actually saved that many people, right?
No, no, all I remember him saving is that one elevator that he caught. It's like, oh, good job, Iron Man. You saved like 5 people.
But you can see where they're coming from, where they're like they want their heroes to feel like heroes, where they're concerned about people and they want to save them all. Like Captain America is like, we have to get everyone off this floating city. And that's great, except it's not it doesn't make for like an exciting action scene. Like it can, except that it goes on for so long, you know?
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like if they do another movie where there's a big city in danger and they have to evacuate everyone, that's going to really be a drag.
Yeah, that could get old pretty quickly.
It was really fresh and new in the first Avengers. Like in that final action scene where Captain America is like telling the policeman what to do, and he's like in that restaurant area saving the people. That stuff's really awesome, and it's new and fresh, and like we hadn't really seen that kind of thing in a superhero movie yet.
I think that's also partially because the difference is partially because of how the Avengers 2 handles making you care about shit. Because like I said before, the Avengers 1, everything felt important, right? It felt like this was a new thing that was happening and it was important, it was going to change things, which Age of Ultron never felt like. You knew they were going to go beat up this bad guy, but it never felt meaningful. And so when they're going to save the people, these are people that we don't associate with in any way, because it's a completely fictional made-up city that only exists to house bad guys. And nothing's really going on there. They're not really planning anything that's meaningful.
It might be explained more in Agents of Shield, maybe, because it felt like that city had some sort of importance, but I was never clued into what that was.
Well, that's the thing. It's like New York City. We know New York City. Everyone knows New York City. This feels like real people. This feels like real Earth and everything.
Hmm.
And this is some clearly made up city that's supposed to look vaguely European, and it just feels fake and just meaningless, just all around. Especially when they're trying to save them while the city's floating up into the air, and you know that they're not just gonna let these people drop on the thing because of the tone of the movie. It just, like in Avengers 1, like it really felt like people might get fucked up and stuff because of the tone and everything and the way Loki was going. But Avengers 2, it just felt meaningless. Like you knew they were gonna save people.
Well, that's the thing. New York is fucking annihilated in the first Avengers movie. You feel the effects of the first Avengers movie in the following movies and in Daredevil, where the whole plot, the whole evil
You
villain.
sort of feel it in Daredevil.
Well, no, in Daredevil, like the whole Kingpin is able to do his evil plan because New York City is in ruins, right?
Hmm.
In Avengers 3, Tony Stark has sort of like a PTSD type thing going on because he went through the wormhole and all that. In Captain America, Winter Soldier, Shield is like falling apart. The first Avengers had impact. Like, it was not only this culmination of all the previous movies, and it was amazing and satisfying, and it felt good and it was fun, and then there's lasting effect on the world. Whereas Avengers 2 doesn't feel like there's going to be that much impact. It was all set up for following movies. It was set up for the Captain America Civil War movie. They tried to set up the Thor movie. They are setting up the new Avengers films by swapping out the roster. Like, gotta get rid of the old ones, bring in the new ones. It was all set up.
Yeah, and that really is just the biggest problem with the movie more than anything is it does not handle plot arcs very well. It doesn't handle complicating plots or resolving plots very well at all. It feels like duct tape across different plot lines.
It just doesn't feel like it's that interested in itself.
Even if it wasn't interested in itself, if it still did a good job of complicating other narrative lines, that would still have a lot of merit going to it. But it just, every single plot line or piece of character development that's brought up is just dropped. Like, the everyone trying to pick up Thor's hammer, there's a lot of stuff that could be going on there. They just drop it. They drop the rivalry between Iron Man and Thor. They're really haphazard with Black Widow and Hulk's relationship, and that is the most well developed plot line in the movie.
I think we should bring up that one scene with Black Widow and Hulk in the bedroom at Hawkeye's house.
Yeah, that also is very emblematic of the cutting process of the movie, I think, because if you're paying attention, tropes, you can pick up on every note they were trying to hit to try to cover all their bases, and you can tell that there was a lot of other stuff that was supposed to be in the middle. Like, you know that everything time she says something, you're like, okay, I see why you would say that if you had said all this other stuff before.
Well, I was reading about this after I saw the movie, and the original content of that scene was very different. What's in the movie is more like they come to understand each other more, and it's almost like they grow to like each other more in that scene. Whereas originally, they had Bruce Banner turning her down, like rejecting her. What's in the movie is kind of horrifying to watch, because there are these lines that sound incredibly sexist and I can't think of the right word, but like minimizing the importance of relationships.
It's like I said, you can see what notes they're trying to hit, and you can see the entire arc of what the scene was supposed to be if you're familiar with tropes and you're paying attention. But the actual way it's cut together is basically completely non sequitur. The responses they make to each other do not make any sense as far as the actual characters go, and the logic they use is just non-existent if you aren't like reading between the lines on everything. Like, you can tell when she's saying I can't have kids, they took that away from me, so who's the monster now? You can sort of tell that what they were going for was, I am such a thoroughly made killing machine that they sexually mutilated me so that I can't even bear kids, is how far it is. And that's what makes me monstrous. I'm that much of a killing machine. But what she ends up saying is, I don't have a uterus, so who's the monster now, Hulk?
I don't know what they were thinking, because the original content of that scene had to be so much better. And I don't understand why it was cut the way it was, because what it comes out as is offensive to me.
It's offensive to a lot of people who are more sensitive to the idea that a lot of people view women's only, like, they view women as mostly just being child machines, which is a big part of sexism and stuff. But a lot of people aren't as sensitive to that, so to them it just more comes across as more of, wow, that's a bit of an overstatement, Black Widow. I'm not sure why you're so upset about that one particular thing.
It's also like in that scene, like, they frame relationships as just being about family and having kids. which I also found offensive.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing is like you can tell that if it was a fully expanded scene, it'd be like, look, Black Widow, I'm attracted to you and everything too, but like you're not even thinking this through. Like imagine if we want to have a family one day, which is like something that comes up when people in tropes like this where people are discussing the possibility of relationships. Like you got to cover your base and be like, hey, are you considering that we might not have a family? And then of course she would respond, I can't even have a family.
Yes.
And she would also talk about how he's not that much of a monster because at least he's a good person, and she was made into something that's exclusively about killing to the point where she can't even have kids because that would just be a distraction.
Basically, it feels like that scene was supposed to be twice as long.